Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Daily War Room Update. We are on day 93 of the war with the terrorists in Gaza, day 92 of the war with the terrorists in Lebanon, and continuing on all fronts. In Judea and Samaria this morning, a terrorist attack which took the life of an Israeli citizen. It happened to be an Israeli Arab citizen. The terrorists don't really care who they target as long as they kill Israelis. We also lost one of our border guard policemen this morning in operations in Jenin. They're intensive fighting to also try and cut out and really cut off all of the terrorist cells that are activating and they're operating there. A massive roadside bomb caused the Jeep that she was traveling in to overturn and caused her death. Over the weekend, we had really a massive barrage of rockets being fired by Hezbollah into Israel, ostensibly in response for the assassination of the Hamas leader Saleh al-Arouri last week in Beirut. Over 60 rockets being fired at a strategic site in Israel's north, trying to knock out really strategic capabilities. What we've seen is the continuation also of the fighting in Gaza, the terrorists there, using schools, using surgeries, using medical installations. All of those were found over the weekend. Just before we joined the program, the IDF released the discovery of another stockpile of rockets and of rocket launchers and of a whole laboratory for improving the accuracy of the rockets that they have. We've seen all of that. And now we're in, as we said, day 93. And what we're going to discuss today together with the president of the JCPA, Dr. Dan Diker, and with our guest, veteran Arab affairs commentator and journalist Yoni Ben Menachem, is the hunt for the Hamas leaders. The only way really that this war can come to a successful end is by eliminating these leaders. So Yoni, give us an update. Who are we talking about? We know Saleh al-Arouri. We've heard of the leaders that are running around in Qatar and Doha, Ismail Haniyeh, Musa Abu Marzouk, in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Def. Who are they? Where are they? And when are we going to get to them?
Okay, so I think that while everybody knows that Israel is trying to hunt down the Hamas leadership in Gaza Strip, which is hiding in the tunnels in the Khan Younis area. We'll get to that later. While this is happening, at the same time, the Israeli Mossad, based on the orders of Prime Minister Netanyahu, is busy trying to target Hamas leaders abroad, leadership abroad. And there was last week, on January the 2nd, there was a big success for Israel when Israel succeeded in targeting the Saleh al-Arouri, number 2 in the leadership of Hamas. Let me tell you some things about al-Arouri. Why is it important that Israel succeeded in killing him? Saleh al-Arouri had the role of the head of the military wing of Hamas in the West Bank. He was carrying terrorist attacks himself, and after he was deported after serving a few years in prison, he was deported abroad, and he first settled in Turkey, then in Qatar, and eventually he arrived to Lebanon, to Beirut. And in addition to him being the head of the military wing in the West Bank, and also second in command, deputy of Ismail Haniyeh, he also had the role of the liaison or the connection of Hamas to Iran and Hezbollah. Now, if we look at the leadership of Hamas abroad and also in Gaza and the West Bank, we see two schools of thoughts. One is the pro-Muslim Brotherhood movement, which is headed by Khalid Mash'al and Musa Abu Marzouk. And the other one is the pro-Iranian school, which is representative was Saleh al-Arouri. You can also say that Ismail Haniya is dancing on these two roles. Sometimes he support the pro-Iranian school, sometimes he support the Muslim Brotherhood school. Anyway, Saleh al-Arouri, he was very close to Iran, and he got a lot of support from Iran and from Hezbollah, from Hassan Nasrallah. Hassan Nasrallah liked him very much, and he allowed him to open an office in Al-Dahya neighborhood, which is the stronghold, the big stronghold of the Hezbollah in Lebanon. And also he gave him residence there. And every week they used to meet in the bunker of Hassan Nasrallah and plan the terror attacks against Israel in different arenas. So he had a very significant role. He was also in the last 2 years busy with Ziad al-Nahala, building the armed terror groups in the north of Samaria, in Jenin, in Tulkarem, in Nablus. As you know, they build this what they call battalion. In Arabic, they call them kataib. That every refugee camp in the north of the West Bank, or the north of Judea and Samaria, had a few dozen terrorists in something which is called Katiba, a battalion, and they are the ones who started making the terror attacks in the West Bank. And and those battalions, they managed to push out the Palestinian Authority security forces, and this is how the PA lost the control on the north of Judea and Samaria. Now, there was an interesting meeting a few months ago between Saleh al-Arouri and the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, and the supreme leader told him, look, the key to destroy Israel is by taking over the West Bank, by taking over Judea and Samaria. And this is very important to topple the regime of Mahmoud Abbas, of the head of the PA. And once you can control the Judea and Samaria, this will be the end of Israel. So he was working very hard in the last few months to carry out terror attacks. He was coordinating these terror attacks with Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, and they used to give instructions to activists, also Palestinian workers who go into Israel to work, were spying for them, giving them information about potential targets inside Israel. And that's the plan was to topple the regime of the PA and taking over the West Bank. He also, Saleh al-Arouri, built the infrastructure in Jenin area that started launching rockets towards Israel from Jenin area, but they were thwarted by the Israeli Shabak, by the Israeli Shin Bet, but this shows the importance of what he was doing against Israel. He was also planning, Saleh al-Arouri was planning to compete in the coming months in the internal elections inside the Hamas, and he wanted to be elected as the head of the political bureau and to replace Ismail Haniya. So this was a very important person. Now, what happened, according to Lebanese sources, was a great success of the Israeli Mossad, and of course the Israeli army, the Israeli Air Force, in killing him. What has happened is that a few months ago, Hezbollah said, it's not something which is secret, but it was also published in Al-Akhbar newspaper, the mouthpiece of Hezbollah in Lebanon. They claimed that they arrested Israeli Mossad spying net in al-Dahya, headed by Hamas activists who were spying. They were spying and collecting information about the movements of Saleh al-Arouri in order to assassinate him. So the Hezbollah and the Lebanese intelligence, they succeeded in arresting this group, and the Hezbollah came to Saleh al-Arouri and gave him the information and told him, look, you have to be careful, you have to take precautions because the Israeli Mossad is after you, they want to kill you. So he didn't take it so seriously. More than that, he came out in the media and gave a few interviews, and he was bragging, I'm not afraid to be a shaheed, to be a martyr. And he said that this spying group that was arrested by the Lebanese intelligence and Hezbollah was not a real threat to his life. And what happened is that the day that he was killed, he insisted to use an old office of Hamas in the Dahya neighborhood in order to have a meeting with the 6 of his assistants. 2 of them are in charge on the military wing of Hamas in South Lebanon, and the others are operating the terror networks in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. They had a meeting, and he insisted to use the old office of Hamas in a Dahya neighborhood. This office was closed down by Hamas on the day of the massacre in the 7th of October because they were afraid that Israel will retaliate and maybe bomb this office or try to plant some explosive there. So they evacuated this office. But Saleh al-Arouri insisted in returning to this office and have the meeting there. And while they were having the meeting, now I'm going to reveal to you that he was killed by an Israeli airplane, not by a drone. Apparently the Israeli Mossad and the Israeli intelligence, they followed him and they knew exactly the place of the meeting and exactly who was going to participate in this meeting, and they planned it very, very good, and they targeted the apartment in the offices in an apartment in a big building, and it was a very accurate attack that killed all the people that were in this office in the apartment. Of course, Saleh al-Arouri and his 6 aides, but nothing happened to the other apartments in the building. So this shows you the accuracy and the good planning of Israel who carried out this attack. So this is this was a big shock for Hassan Nasrallah, because Nasrallah understands now that the hand that reached Saleh al-Arouri in al-Dahya in Beirut, which is the stronghold of Hamas, a few, maybe 100 meters from where he's having the meetings with Saleh al-Arouri, maybe also from his bunker. So the hand that killed Saleh al-Arouri can easily reach also himself and kill Hassan Nasrallah himself. So actually, this was a big humiliation. It's still a big humiliation to Hezbollah, and it's also a big failure to Hezbollah because they could have rescued or prevent this assassination of Saleh al-Arouri if they would put guards on him, if they would insist and prevent him from going to this office of Hamas to have the meeting. But they didn't take these precautions, and this is considered a big humiliation to Nasrallah. Why also it is so important to stress this point? Because in last August, Hassan Nasrallah came out with a speech and he was warning Israel not to try to assassinate any Palestinian or Iranian or Hezbollah activist on a Lebanese soil. And he specifically said on camera in a speech that this is a red line. And if it will happen, then Israel will pay a very big or high price for such an assassination. And Israel simply ignored the red line of Hassan Nasrallah and assassinated Saleh al-Arouri in the heart of the El Dahia neighborhood. And this is a big humiliation for Hassan Nasrallah.
Yoni,
just to complete this briefing about Saleh al-Arouri, and then we will move to Gaza, to the leadership in Gaza. So now, as I said, it's a big embarrassment for Hezbollah, and the Hamas leadership now is making consultations how to deal with the new situation, because they see that Israel started the targeting, not only trying to target Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Def and Marwan Issa in Gaza, but they're also trying to target the leadership abroad. So all the leaders of Hamas who live or work in Lebanon went underground, and also the leaders of Islamic Jihad, such as Ziad al-Nahala, the General Secretary of Islamic Jihad, and Akram al-Arouri, who is the head of the military wing of Islamic Jihad, who is also based in Beirut. All of them now are in underground. And at the same time, the Hamas leadership is now consulting to appoint a successor for Saleh al-Arouri, and the leading candidate to replace him as the head of the military wing of Hamas in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, is Zaher al-Jabarin. Zaher al-Jabarin is one of the founders of the military wing of Hamas in Judea and Samaria. He is the one who recruited Yahya Ayash, who is called the engineer. His nickname was the engineer, and he was also assassinated by the Israeli Shin Bet. And he's also the financial manager of Hamas, and he's running the big operation of money laundering. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of Hamas properties. So he's laundering the money, and he's the one who is sending the money to the Hamas in Gaza, to the military wing of Hamas in Gaza. He lives in Turkey, in Istanbul, and he also has close ties with President Erdogan. So he enjoys some sort of an immunity. So now he's the leading candidate to replace Saleh al-Arouri, and I think that his first mission will be to try and take revenge of Israel for the assassination of Saleh al-Arouri. That means that it's going to try and carry out terror attacks through the sleepers, Hamas sleepers in the West Bank, terror attacks to revenge the death of Saleh al-Arouri.
Yoni, it seems the death of Saleh al-Arouri is a very big event in cognitive warfare. And the question is also that Israel's 93 days into the war, and it has not managed to put its hands on Sinwar or on Mohammed Def. So how important is it, first of all, that we haven't succeeded yet to put our hands on them, and how important is it that in the coming period that both of these guys are eliminated?
So let's move to the Gaza Strip, to the leadership of the military wing in Gaza Strip. Last Thursday, the Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, and the head of the Shabak of the Shin Bet, Ronen Bar, they visited the Khan Younis area, and they went down to the tunnels inside the Khan Younis area to approve the IDF military plan to take over the tunnels in Khan Younis area, where the leadership, the military leadership of Hamas is hiding in the tunnels, with, as you mentioned, the names Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Def, Marwan Issa, and also Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of Yahya Sinwar. These are the four who are the leadership of the military wing of Hamas in Gaza. Now, the complex, which is underground in the Khan Younis area, is a huge complex. The Israeli military says that we are talking about 160 kilometers of tunnels under Khan Younis city. So just imagine what is this big operation supposed to be? That's not only small tunnels, there are also strategic tunnels that you can move with cars inside the tunnels. So this is a huge challenge for the IDF to try to take control of it. And actually, the concentration of the fighting now in Gaza Strip is on the Khan Younis area, also in the refugee camps in the center of Gaza, like Nuseirat and Marazi, but the main focus is the Khan Younis underground compound of these tunnels, because not only that the military leadership is hiding there, they're also, according to the IDF estimation, they're holding the hostages, the Israeli hostages, with them as human shields under the ground in the tunnels. So this is now the main fighting of the IDF in Gaza, is in this area of Khan Younis, on the ground, above the ground and underground, in order to try and kill or arrest or capture the military leadership of Hamas. And the IDF believes that if they will succeed, if they will have achievement in targeting these leaders of the military wing, this can have an influence on the war, and maybe even if the IDF will be successful, this will bring the Hamas surrender in Gaza Strip.
That's the understanding, Yoni, clearly that the whole compound under Khan Younis is the place where everyone is now focusing on, where much of the IDF activity is now, I think, focusing on. But it brings along with it that strategic impediment of really the understanding that that's also where the hostages are being held. So as opposed to the tunnels that we could destroy possibly from the air in the Gaza city, in the northern area of the Gaza Strip, here it appears we're going to have to approach the subject on a much more strategic and much more surgical manner. And obviously that is going to be something which is going to maybe be less or inflict less damage on the street, but be much more dangerous for IDF forces. How are we going to get through that labyrinth of tunnels? Is this intelligence that we already have? As we've seen, there's been not a small amount of intelligence gathered. I saw an estimation, I think this morning, of over 2 million documents that have been gathered up by the IDF forces throughout the operations until now, as well as really weeks, months, years of video footage, the work of putting this all together into a comprehensive understanding, but really that searching for that map of the tunnels is, I think, what's guiding the IDF forces at the moment, right?
Right. I think they have a good success. It's, of course, I think most of the details are under censorship, but from what I understand, from what I can guess, the IDF captured a computer, a laptop. Maybe it belongs to Mohammed Def, and they have the blueprints of the tunnel system. So this is very helpful. And also in Khan Younis itself, the IDF managed to arrest live terrorists, and in the interrogation, they gave information about the possible whereabouts of the leadership of Hamas in Khan Younis tunnels. Now, these tunnels, it's very hard to destroy them from the air, because even if you manage to hit the shaft of the tunnel, the opening, with a bomb, then you can maybe destroy the shaft, but not necessarily bring the collapse of the tunnel itself. So this was built very sophisticatedly. It's not only one tunnel, it's built on floors. You have a few floors of tunnels, and each floor has a role. Like one floor might be for the manufacture of rockets. The other floor might be for sleeping, resting, and maybe the bottom of the tunnel. I'm talking about 70, 80 meters down in the tunnel. This is the place that they might be hiding the leadership of Hamas. In the bunker where they are conducting the fighting against the IDF. So it's very difficult to get to them. And also you cannot throw bombs into the tunnels because they might be surrounded by the Israeli hostages as human shields. So it's very dangerous. So the army now, of course, we don't know all the details, but some of it was released, that they have special tactics. They have this special unit for fighting inside the tunnels, which is called the Halom in the IDF, and they are using dogs. They are using dogs and other methods to fight in the tunnels. They first send the dogs, and even some Israeli IDF fighters are going into the tunnels in a very careful way, using all sort of special gadgets and tech and weapons that they develop for fighting inside the tunnels. We cannot elaborate about it, but the army is now learning how to fight in the tunnels. I think that it's only a matter of time until the IDF will get to these terrorists and will kill them or arrest them. This is now the main focus of the IDF in Gaza Strip, is to get to the military leadership of Hamas.
I think, Dan, that this would be, were the IDF actually able to get to the leadership of Hamas in Khan Younis? The IDF even released today an illustration of what this tunnel system looks like. I would imagine quite accurate based on what Yoni said of seizing or capturing the computer of Mohammed Def. That would be really a massive strategic move forward, because it would allow the IDF to then move to the next stage of the fighting. Once you've cut off the head of the snake, as it were, then you could possibly move, and then at a slower pace, at a different pace, not necessarily with the bombardments from the air, as the Americans are always pushing. That's something which could possibly help change the phase to the next phase of the fighting. And it would mean that we're getting closer to that goal of destroying Hamas, taking out its leadership, taking out its guiding forces, taking out these people who were the driving forces behind the massacre. And that's something I think which really needs to be pushed forward.
There is a very important thing that we should talk about that might be developed if the Israeli army will have a success there in Khan Younis in the underground, and that is that Yahya Sinwar and the leadership with him, they are sure that they are safe, because they regard the Israeli hostages that they are holding next to them as a insurance certificate. And they are sure that the IDF will not dare to do anything because of the hostages. So this way they are safe, and the hostages guarantee the physical survival of the leadership of Hamas. Now, there might be a scenario, and I know that this has been discussed in the military and also in the political echelon. There might be a possible scenario that Israel will locate the exact location of the leadership of Hamas in the tunnels in Khan Younis, and the cabinet, the security cabinet, will have to take a decision what to do, whether to attack this military leadership in the tunnels and risking killing the hostages, or trying to negotiate with them for the release of the hostages in exchange for them leaving the tunnels and maybe being deported abroad. This is a possible scenario that can happen in the coming weeks.
That we saw the Saudi plan being released over the weekend, which made exactly that suggestion: the release of the hostages in return for the expulsion of the Hamas leadership to Algeria. Where does
Right.
that plan come from? Why does it come from Saudi Arabia? Why is Qatar not pushing that along? Can you explain a little bit about that, Yoni?
Yeah. Originally, this idea, I checked it. This idea of deportation of the leadership of Hamas in Gaza, the source of it was some sort of a think tank in France that offered this possibility, and it was brought to Macron, and it was also discussed by the French intelligence, and they presumed that Algeria is very supportive of Hamas. So they presume that they will agree to, nobody discussed it with Algeria, but they presume that Algeria will agree because it has very good ties with Hamas. The problem is that according to sources in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar relaxed when he hears this suggestion that he will be deported, or will agree to come out from the tunnels and be deported with Muhammad Def to Algeria or to any other country. And according to these people in Gaza, he's saying, I'm going to stick to the end, and we are going to be shuhada, we're going to be martyrs, we're not going to surrender to Israel, to the IDF, and the IDF cannot do anything to us because we have the hostages, and this is the best protection that we can have.
Yoni, you remember the past efforts at deportation back in the early 90s when Yitzhak Rabin was defense minister, as a matter of fact, just before the Oslo catastrophe was signed. There were several hundred Hamas,
405
to be exact.
405.
Our international attorney Maurice
they were deported
exactly.
They were deported to
southern Lebanon.
They were deported to Marj Zuhur
To Marj Zuhur in southern Lebanon, and that became the first Shiite penetration back into the Palestinian areas under Iranian sanctions.
And it was a terrible disaster. Almost every one of those Hamas leaders came back to Israel, the Gaza Strip, and Judea and Samaria, and took up senior leadership posts. It was almost a training camp for terrorists.
It was a training camp. You know, Mahmoud al-Zahar, one of the senior leaders of Hamas in Gaza Strip, I had good connections with him at that time. And after he came back from Marj Zuhur, he told me that the Hezbollah operatives were coming every day to this tent. It was a camp of tents. And they were teaching Hamas leaders and operatives how to make explosive against the IDF.
So there you have it, a very bad precedent for, number one, deportation, number two, deepening the connection with the IRGC in other countries. It seems to me if that Israel fails to decapitate the leadership and kill them, the idea of deportation is just as bad as leaving them in the Gaza Strip.
Not only that, from the moral point of view, this leadership is responsible for the massacre of 1,200 Israelis. They have to be killed. There is no other punishment for them, only death. No deportation, nothing, only death.
I think that's absolutely right, Dan. Any chance, any ability of these people to live the next chapter in their lives, running around in another country in the world, freedom of movement, whatever it may be, I think that would be seen to be a win for the terrorists and your favorite subject, like it's that perception of what's going on. It doesn't really matter what happens, doesn't matter if they've been sent to the end of the world. Just the fact that they can be seen alive, sitting on a chair, drinking a coffee, having a cigarette, whatever it may be, and that perception will be the picture of their victory and our loss, which is why I think it is important to make sure that we get to that position where either they are killed or that we arrest them and we put them on trial, and then at the end of that trial process, they are sentenced.
By the way, according to sources in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar is not alone in this tunnel. He's also with his family, with his wife and the children. So that shows you that he is taking care of not only of himself, he's taking care of his family also, trying to make sure that nothing will happen to them. And they are hiding with him inside the tunnels underneath Khan Younis.
Is he taking care of them, Yoni, or using them as human shields?
No, I think you know there are a lot of stories about Yahya Sinwar after this massacre. Now I hear many stories from the Palestinians. One of the stories I heard that in the last 2 years he was very busy making children because he was planning this massacre, and he was telling Hamas. Who were asking him, Hamas operatives, why do you every year your wife is giving birth? He used to say, I'm not going to stay around here. I will be a shaheed very soon, so I want to leave many children as possible to my wife.
That's an unbelievable outlook on life, Dan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're the head of a terrorist organization, and all you're interested in doing is creating more progeny to carry on in your terror path.
Absolutely.
And that's what interests him.
Yoni, a couple of other issues that before we sign off, and that is, there is a huge discussion going on in Israel. As you know, last night, Motzei Shabbat, in Kikar Rabin, in the Rabin Square in Tel Aviv, was a major demonstration of families of hostages and others who are calling for a negotiation. Question becomes, Yoni, what is the loss of deterrence if Israel were to do a one-time, no other but a total deal of all of the hostages for all of the captives, and then once you've got all of your captives home, if that's the deal, then you can go out in a major sort of post-1972 Munich massacre strategy and start killing them one by one?
There's no offer like that on the table. This is only news reports. And there's no possibility that Yahya Sinwar will offer such a deal. This is all media spins. Because, as I explained to you, the hostages, Yahya Sinwar regards the Israeli hostages as an insurance certificate, not only for personal survivor, but also to a political survivor as the leader of Gaza Strip. And he demands, it does not demand, let's release all the Israeli hostages in return for all the Palestinian terrorists in Israeli jails. This is no proposal like that. He demands releasing some of the Israeli hostages in return for a full Israeli ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza Strip, so he can stay the leader, holding the rest of the hostages as a security, as an insurance certificate, because he wants to, after he's going to get the release of all the Palestinian prisoners, he wants to demand an Israeli guarantee to lift the siege of Gaza and to allow a Palestinian to build a port in Gaza with international guarantees so they can smuggle weapons from Iran into Gaza. This is the big plan of Yahya Sinwar. So there's no offer on the table for what you mentioned.
Yahya Sinwar doesn't see himself as losing.
No, well, he's won. I mean, you can make the argument that Yahya Sinwar, from his point of view, has won. He's become the Time Magazine jihadi of the year, and everything that happens now is secondary.
He is one of the next two, or the next after that, of Izzadin al-Qassam. He's going to go down in the annals of at least of Palestinian history, if not of Muslim history, as the person who carried out this massive massacre.
Yeah, Yoni, is there a way that Israel can actually score a victory here under these circumstances, where we lost tremendous deterrence on October 7th? We lost we lost that immediate military confrontation. We lost the PSYOPs battle on that day. What, in your view, does Israel have to do to recover its deterrence, to recover the psychological warfare victory from now until the end of the Hamas leadership?
I don't want to sound blunt. I was asking this question, what is the picture of victory for Israel in this war? I was asking a few interviews to foreign media. So I think personally that the only picture of victory is killing the military leadership of Hamas. There's no other way to gain victory. And this is why it's a big dilemma, because because they are surrounded by Israeli hostages, and the cabinet will have to take a crucial decision about how to deal with it. But in my opinion, there's no other way but to kill them, and not only kill them. We are talking so far Israel killed, according to IDF estimation, 8,000 terrorists only, which is maybe 1/3 of the power of the military wing of Hamas in Gaza. This is nothing. So what we need to see is thousands of terrorists killed. This is the picture of victory. And only when we see that, only if we see tunnels filled with the bodies of terrorists, with thousands of terrorists, and we'll see the military leadership dead, only then we can talk about an Israeli victory. So we have to know and to be very focused about this issue. And I tell you, I'm personally very happy, very satisfied to hear the Prime Minister almost every day, Prime Minister Netanyahu, declaring in the cabinet meeting, while he's visiting the soldiers, or while he's going to the hospitals to visit the injured soldiers, all the time he's saying, we do not stop, we go to the end. I think that Netanyahu is very focused on this issue, and he understands that the only way to get the Israeli victory is kill the military leadership and kill thousands and thousands of terrorists in Gaza. There's no other way to win this war.
So I think one of the pictures of victory, Dan, that Israel needs to try and generate is the same picture of the victory over Al-Qaeda, as it were. The killing of Osama bin Laden on camera, as the leadership looks over and watches and then congratulates themselves for that success, as Obama did. That's, I think, the picture of victory that Israel needs to see over these Hamas leaders.
This is very important point of what you mentioned now with Obama and Osama bin Laden, because I think that the Israeli leaders should behave exactly as the American presidents, not only Obama, even President Biden. He killed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in Syria, and President Trump, he killed Qasem Soleimani. Yes, so the American presidents understand the meaning of fighting terrorism and killing the leaders. We should not be ashamed of killing those leaders.
What President Obama did as an addition, Qasem Soleimani was killed by the drone. The same with al-Baghdadi. What happened with Osama bin Laden was a different story. With Osama bin Laden, the forces not only killed him, they took his body and disposed of it in the sea. That's I think the message that needs to be promoted, to make sure that I don't know how many people know there are of the participants in the 1929 massacre in Israel, in Hebron, Jerusalem, Sfat. There were 3 people who were executed by the British. They are considered to be Palestinian heroes. People visit their graves. They have graves, and those grave sites have become almost sites for coming to celebrate the acts of terrorism, celebrate the massacres of Jews. And any time where you have a grave site like that, a place where you can have this place of almost worship for the terrorists, I think that would be a terrible idea. And the way that we need to make sure that the body is dealt with is to adopt the American practices.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Definitely.
Yoni, thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time has come to an end, and we will obviously continue on hunting the Hamas leadership. And in the meantime, we will be carrying on with our daily briefings and updates on the war and giving it that really critical context, which seems to be so lacking in many other places. We will see you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Israel time. Until then, stay safe. And that's it.
Yeah, and actually want to thank our regular participants. We see your names on the sidebar, and thank you ever so much for your very generous support of this program, the Wartime Diplomacy Center at the JCPA. You enable us to continue running this program and upgrading our equipment. We're now, right as we speak, in the beta testing for a daily a program with JLTV out of Los Angeles. And we do need that $20,000 to enable us to upgrade our equipment and upgrade the entire program and reach millions and really tens of millions of households. You're enabling us to do that. For those of you who are still considering being a sponsor, we're going to have a sponsorship wall on the daily wartime diplomacy briefing. JCPA, please consider a JGive right on the site, a JGive gift of either 180 or 360, or even if you're feeling very robust, a potential $1,800 one-time contribution to help us achieve that permanent upgrade of our equipment. And we thank you for everything you're doing and joining us every day. We hope that we're creating context, perspective in our deeper analysis than you can find anywhere else in Israel, certainly in English. And we'll love your comments and continued participation. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow together with our dear friend, Maurice Hirsch and Yoni Ben Menachem, who comes again and again. We look forward, and thank you to Daniel Levin for producing.